real pleased to be in here this evening. Gives me a chance to get out of Washington. Come here and take a look at you. Gives you a chance to take a look at me. After looking at all you fine folks, all I gotta say is, I got the best of that bargain. I'm real pleased. Oh, you think I need? Well, thank you. Oh, that's much better. Thank you, Gary. Yeah. And I'm real pleased to be here because I have a great love of Pennsylvania. You may not know this, but I have deep family roots in Pennsylvania. My people, who were Quakers, moved this country from England way back in the 1630s. And they settled up in Hingham, Massachusetts. Now, there's one thing about the Lincolns. Boy, they sure did move a lot. They moved maybe for the same reason that some of you moved, for a new job, a better home, maybe more productive land. So they moved a few times up in Massachusetts, and a branch of the family came down into Toms River, New Jersey, where my great-great-grandfather, Mordecai Lincoln, worked as an iron worker. Anybody here named Mordecai? That's a great name. You don't hear that name very often. That was my great-great-grandfather's name. Well, he did what all the Lincolns did. He moved from New Jersey, come into Pennsylvania, along the Schuylkill River, and actually settled outside of Reading, Pennsylvania, a little town called Birdsboro. And he was neighbors with the Boones. In fact, some of the Boones and Lincolns intermarried. But Mordecai, they tell me, built a home in 1730 that's still standing. If you go to the Daniel Boone homestead and ask the Dauphin for directions to Mordecai Lincoln's house, they'll give you about a mile and a half away, but you come up to a fence because it's privately owned. And they're not using it as a house. They're using it as a storage facility. I think the great thing is that some, like the state of Pennsylvania, would buy that and it'd be a real tourist attraction. Abraham Lincoln's great-great-grandfather Mordecai Lincoln's house. Well, Mordecai is buried in a Quaker graveyard right outside of Harrisburg. And here's where the roots even get deeper. Mordecai had a son, John Lincoln, my great-grandfather. And he married a Lancaster County gal by the name of Rebecca Flowers. And they had a son, Abraham Lincoln, my grandfather. That's who I was named after. He was born in Pennsylvania. So you can see why I have deep family roots in Pennsylvania. Now, my first visit to Pennsylvania came back in 1848 when I attended the Whig presidential convention that was held in Philadelphia. Now, I wasn't a delegate, but I wanted to see what the process was, and they did a good job. They nominated Zachary Taylor, became the 12th president, and Millard Fillmore became the 13th president. They did a good job. But I also wanted to come there so I could spend and walk in the footsteps of our founding fathers. I revered our founding fathers, especially with their plan to eliminate slavery. Oh yes, our founding fathers had a plan to eliminate slavery. You see, they were very familiar with slavery. They knew that the first Spanish colony, St. Augustine, had slaves. First English colony, way back, 1619, Jamestown, Virginia, had slaves. So when they met in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, to form a new government, they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And they are endowed under their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then our founding fathers said, now, if we can't settle the issue of slavery where it currently exists, we're going to do the next best thing. We're not going to let slavery grow. And he was chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Now, when we attempted to resupply Fort Sumter, Charleston Harbor in South Carolina, and the insurgents opened fire and the Civil War began, I called for 75,000 soldiers for a period of 90 days to put down the rebellion. But I didn't have any money to pay them. So Thaddeus Stevens, in record time, introduced the bill in the House, put it in the committee, got it out of committee, voted on it, sent it up to the Senate, got it back from the Senate, voted on it in record time. I had money to pay those soldiers. And I'll tell you, that was a tremendous thing. And another time, when I asked for $400,000 on his own, he raised it to $500,000. He didn't like me because he didn't think I was moving fast enough on the issue of slavery. But after the Emancipation Proclamation, I think he changed his stance. And at the state level, your great governor, Andrew Gray Kirk, was a man of tact and forward thinking. He kept the Pennsylvania militia together. So when I called for those 75,000 troops, the first troops to enter Washington were from Pennsylvania. And they produced my first Civil War grin, because I knew the insurgents could knock, but they weren't getting in. And he established a training facility outside of Harrisburg, later named after him, called Camp Girton. It was the largest training facility in the North. In fact, it was the largest training facility north or south. By the end of the war, some 300,000 soldiers had passed through Camp Girton. And he made sure that Harrisburg was the railroad center. All of the ammunition, all of the supplies came out of Harrisburg on railroad cars to the Eastern Front, or out of Harrisburg on railroad cars over to Altoona, Pennsylvania, over the Allegheny Mountains to the Western Front. And also, it was Andrew Gray Kirk that came into my office after the Battle of Gettysburg and told me that he had purchased 17 acres of the battlefield. And he was going to have a cemetery for the Union fallen. And also, he did something that you may not know of. In 1862, he established the first Loyal Governors Conference that met in Altoona, the Logan Hotel. They had two items on the agenda. How can we assist Abraham Lincoln bringing the Civil War to a successful conclusion? And how can we help him implement the Emancipation Proclamation? And they came to Washington. And I'll tell you, I was so glad to see that, because I knew then we could bring the war to a successful conclusion because I had the support of the people. And I'll tell you, he did a wonderful thing in Andrew Gray Kirk. Under his leadership, Pennsylvania supplied over 350,000 soldiers to the Union cause, more than any other state with the exception of New York. 575 of them are buried in Gettysburg. So he did a wonderful job. And not only that, the people of Pennsylvania, the towns of Pennsylvania paid the price for liberty. The Battle of Hanover, General Kilpatrick drove Confederate General Jeb Stuart east to York in 1863 at the dedication of the cemetery at Gettysburg. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for all those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world little knows no long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which those who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is for us rather to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and in government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Thank you. Thank you. I have some time for a few questions before I get back to Washington. Yes.
Did you know Booth personally?
No, I knew of the Booth family. There was brother Edwin was a great Shakespearean actor, and I had seen John Wilkes Booth at a play. I thought he was a better acrobat than he was an actor.
And did you have government protection?
Well, I did have. I had a guard, and after the first act, he went out and got a beer, and never came back. And the reason that Booth was able to get in was he was, of course, an actor. He knew that theater. He had seen this play before, and so he knew that in Act 3, Scene 2, there was always a big laugh line. So he timed his shot with that laugh line so that nobody would hear the shot. And he did his job. But being an actor, he couldn't resist the moment. And he jumped up on the balcony, which was about 12 feet to the stage, and said, 6 separate tyrannies, thus always with tyrants. And when he fell, it ended awkwardly and broke his right leg. And that slowed him down, and he was captured and shot 12 days later. Yes?
In your day, you got a lot of support. It's a kind of paradox of sorts. You got a lot of support from nativists, know-nothings, people of that sort. Yet at the same time, you were purchasing German language newspapers to help further your own partisan cause. Did you see a contradiction between the two things?
No, I didn't. I think they had their view in there, but they supported the union, and that was the overall thing. And we had to save the union. We had, like, for instance, all the Irish. We had to get Irish leadership. We had to get German leadership because they identified with their political bosses, not exactly the state. So, it's a big help. We couldn't have won a war without them, I can tell you that. Yes?
Aside from your political career, you obviously had a personal life, and I was fascinated to learn about your wrestling career. That you, if I get this right, had about 300 matches and only lost one.
Well, that's
and
true.
I'd like to know how you got into wrestling.
I think that's a hyperbole of history. I was not what you would call a professional wrestler. We just wrestled, for instance, the Armstrong and I, we wrestled. And we, for years, said I won and he said he won. So really, that was just for fun games. We didn't really have matches or anything like today. Yes?
I just want to say that you're my granddaughter's favorite president, and she did a term paper on the Gettysburg Address and got an A+ on it. So.
All right, good. You get an A?
Yeah, she got an A+.
All right.
Yeah. And it was based on the Gettysburg Address, and she just recently went to the Lincoln Memorial. She was a little upset because she couldn't get to touch the statue, but
Yeah.
she got a lot of pictures.
Yeah. I always, when I speak sometimes to people that maybe groups, school groups that are going from Gettysburg to the Lincoln Memorial, I always ask them, when you go up the steps, to the left is the Gettysburg Address, but please look over to the right, which is Lincoln's second inaugural. A lot of times it gets overlooked. That was a wonderful speech also. Yes, way in the back.
Mr. President, I would just like to thank you for instituting a Thanksgiving Day and in God we trust on our currency.
Yes.
Well, I really, other people had suggested Thanksgiving. I just went along with it. I agreed. I thought it was a great idea. Yeah. Yes.
Just want to say thank you about making the Transcontinental Railroad possible for today.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I always said that when I talk to California groups, I always say my wife Mary and I have never been to California. But that Transcontinental Railroad is complete, where we get on that train and ready to your state. Yes, sir.
Well, you couldn't have known this at the time, but the guy that organized your assassination was the Confederate head of Secret Service by the name of Bullard. B-U-L-L-O-C-K. And his sister was the mother of Teddy Roosevelt, who later became president when they murdered your general, your soldier, McKinley.
Yeah,
In 1901.
Not
So,
that-
we're still going after these guys. Don't worry, we're gonna get them.
Well, you know, a lot of people don't realize that the plot had four legs to it. One was they're going to assassinate Grant, assassinate me, they're going to assassinate my Secretary of State and my Vice President, Andrew Johnson, and William Stewart. And they couldn't do Grant because he didn't come to the play. He and his wife went to New Jersey to visit their children. And then William Stewart was attacked, but he had in a carriage accident 2 weeks before, and he had like a brace around his neck, and this broke in and stabbed him, but glanced off the thing, and he was subdued. And the fellow that was supposed to assassinate Andrew Johnson was in the bar and lost his nerve and left. So what their hope was, if they assassinated the four leaders, then it would influence the South to keep fighting. Yeah. Well, I have to get back to Washington, but I want to thank you for all those questions and being a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
Okay. This is different than Harrisburg.
Give the light one back.